Hello, welcome to my bookshelf, and today I am extremely excited to debut my first ever book chat. Now, I want this video series to be different from my book reviews, so my review videos are going to just involve an overview of my thoughts and feelings on the book and what I liked about it, what I didn't like, but I'm going to save the deeper discussion, the really big themes of the book and the interesting parts of the characters and the storyline. I'm going to leave that to the book chat. I want to delve into a bigger discussion in a book chat instead of in my review, so my reviews can be shorter and more succinct. I'm going to try to do more reviews. I've been getting discouraged lately, I think because I wasn't separating these two ideas and it was becoming very daunting. So one last thing I should say about these book chats is that I'm going to go under the assumption that you have already read this book before, or you at least know what it's about before watching this video. I am going to be spoiling the book if you haven't actually read it, so, spoiler warning, of course, but also just, as far as your understanding goes of what I'm talking about, you're going to want to at least know what the book is about. And I've already discussed, the general what this book is about in the review, so if you want to watch that first, you can, just to kind of get an idea about what exactly is going on. So that all being said, my first ever book chat will be on none other than Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. So when going over my notes for this book, I realized that there's two really big themes that other sub-themes kind of fit underneath it. So the first one would be the importance of course, books, in a society that burns books and bans them. Books are obviously very important, and that's a big theme. Kind of going along with the books is curiosity and love of knowledge. Because that's really why the books are being banned in the first place, is that these books contain discussion about people's different opinions on different topics. And there's this dialogue between, the reader and the author and just other people who read it as well. And these discussions spark, some arguments sometimes. And that's kind of the problem in this society. They don't want that conflict that comes from, reading and discussing a book. And society wants to avoid that at all costs. So their solution is to, instead of dealing with whatever problem is causing the conflict that people are arguing about, they're not going to resolve that. That would be too hard, Let's just remove the book so people aren't even talking about it. So it's kind of putting a band-aid over it, if you will. It's a mentality that if I don't see the problem, it's not there. If there's no books that point out this problem, then there isn't a problem. So, everything's great, right? But it's not true. I mean, that's not solving the problem at all. It's in fact making it worse because you're not dealing with it. And let me tell you, it's going to eventually get out of control, and then it'll be too late to do anything about it. And that's kind of where the society is at. They've gotten to the point where they don't even remember a time when firemen didn't start fires. They think that's just kind of how it's always been, even though that's obviously not true. Because they don't have books and people don't talk to each other, people have lost history. They don't know what used to be, and because of that, they're doomed to make all the same mistakes over and over again. But this society's problem is more than just banning books. It seems to kind of ban any kind of curiosity or any kind of media that has any kind of substance or meaning behind it. People are constantly distracted in this society by these screens. They're watching these shows that are interactive, and they keep them occupied. So they never have time to stop and actually think about things that actually matter. Which is a huge problem, because again, if you don't talk about problems, you can't solve them. And then you see the society that this book presents to us, where no one talks to each other. And that gets to the next theme of the book, which seems to be the importance of connection, of human interaction with each other. Genuine human interaction with each other. Merely being in the same household as someone does not constitute connection or human interaction. And that's evident by our main character, Guy Montag, and his wife Mildred. They live under the same roof, but they're so isolated from each other. And even though Mildred is in a lot of emotional pain, clearly because she tries to commit suicide, she never once reaches out to her husband and talks to him about anything that she's thinking or feeling that leads her to do this. Guy Montag walks in and he's able to call the paramedics, and they're able to get her stomach pumped because she took too many pills. So she doesn't die, but the fact that she tried to die and he never once knew that anything was wrong is a huge problem, and it really starts to eat away at Montag, our main character. But he again doesn't talk to her about it. He wants to, but anytime he kind of mentions anything remotely serious, she just shuts him down and says, I don't want to talk about bad things. Let's just talk about nice things. And Montag looks at her and he realizes that the Mildred that took those pills, she's not there. She's so deep down inside of his wife that they're like two separate people that have never actually met. Which, by the way, is one example of the amazing imagery that this book has throughout it. The writing is just so beautiful, and there's a lot of really vibrant imagery just throughout the book, which makes it a really enjoyable read, and also pretty ironic because you're reading about a society that's banned book and any kind of meaningful but also beautiful entertainment. So we have this society that no longer has any kind of quality entertainment or quality information. No one's really discussing anything of any importance. And they've become so isolated. And this pain of isolation eats away at each and every one of them. But the tragedy of it is that they don't communicate with each other. They all feel this pain, it seems like, but no one's talking about it. No one's telling each other how they actually feel about anything. And so they internalize it. And sad to say that Mildred was one of many people in the society that attempt some kind of suicide. That when the people come to pump the stomach, they are so nonchalant about it. It's no big deal. You know, we have 7 other people that we did already this night. We have another call already. It's just so prevalent in the society that it's completely no big deal to them. Which to me is a horrifying thought. But it seems like Montag isn't really aware that it's so prevalent, and it kind of takes him aback, I think. And this obviously is a huge, huge problem. They're interacting through these screens, but they're not interacting in real life, in person. Mildred is constantly being distracted by the people on her screens, but they don't actually know her as a real person. And her husband doesn't even know her as a real person. Another theme of this book seems to be that people change people, which I took that wording from Girl Meets World. Such a great show. So sad it was canceled. I really liked the way that it's phrased there. You know, people change people. You know, the secret of life. But it's so true, and it really does seem that this is a theme of the book. We see that with our main character. Not surprisingly, our main character goes through a change. He's actually a fireman in the society, so he's one of the people, you know, burning the books. But despite that, he's been secretly stealing books here and there from people's houses, which is pretty scandalous if you think about it. And he doesn't seem to really know why he's doing it. At least at first, he just does it out of instinct. It's almost like someone else is taking the book. By the way, Montag, he seems to have some uneasiness with the society, but he doesn't really seem to know what to do with it. Again, no one's expressing their feelings, so he doesn't really know how to express his own feelings or what he even is feeling. But he meets this old English professor. His name is Faber. They discuss the problems with the society, and they're also trying to figure out a solution to it. But Faber tells them, it's not that easy. It's not like people would be willing to read if you just gave them a book. Like, it's gone too far now. He even mentions, firemen really aren't even that necessary anymore because people just don't read anymore. It's not that people are stopping them. No one's going out to pick up the book in the first place. Even if the firemen stopped, burning books, it's not like society would just start reading all again. No one has that interest anymore. So it's not quite so simple. And Montag's really distressed by this. He wants to do something about it now that he really knows more about it and has more of an opinion on it. but he doesn't know what to do and he doesn't seem to have direction. But Faber kind of, with Montag's insistence, Faber gives him some direction and he tells him about these other English professors and where you can find them. And now Montag has this path to follow. He has some kind of direction to go in. He's still kind of all over the place and he does some very rash things, but he at least has some direction and some, way to channel his rage and anger. And also, Faber is changed by Montag. Faber, he had these thoughts and feelings about how he didn't like the society and he wanted to do something against it, but he was too afraid to do anything. He just kind of sat in his house and hoped no one found him, kind of a thing. But seeing Montag and seeing his rage, it really invigorated Faber to actually want to do something. So he does end up helping Montag, even though he initially doesn't want to do anything with him. There's also a lot of interesting contrast between characters. I would say that the biggest case of this would be Clarice, this young girl that Montag meets at the beginning of the story, and his wife Mildred. I think they're complete opposites as far as characters go. So Clarice is this young girl and she's so vibrant and so alive and so different from everyone in this society. She actually questions things and she's not afraid to, talk to this fireman, which normally people, they shy away from him because of his profession. But she's just curious about him and his job and what he does. And this is just so unusual. Like, people don't talk to each other, not about, again, anything that matters. So she just goes up to him and she just asks him, did firemen always used to burn books? I heard they didn't, She's not afraid to say things like that. And I think at first Montag doesn't really know what to think about her, but he eventually kind of goes to like her, even though she's different. And probably because she is different, for once. She actually has feelings and emotions, and she lets them show, and she's not afraid to be curious. We're introduced to Clarice before we're introduced to Mildred. And so, in comparison, they're completely opposite. So, we have this vibrant, alive young woman in Clarice, and then, in the book, Montag, he goes home to his wife, she looks dead. I mean, this is, he finds her during her suicide attempt. So she's just this empty shell of a person. Even when she is awake, just because she's completely devoid of her own emotions and feelings. She comes off as being very childish, and so the comparison between the two is very extreme. Clarice is the complete opposite of Mildred. But I think it's a good way to get us to really understand the severity of the society where it's at. So another really interesting plot point that happens in the book is that during Montag's escape at the end, he's running away from everything and he barely escapes, right? The TVs, they show Montag being captured, but obviously it's not really him. It's just to kind of show everyone else in the world that, we captured him, don't worry, everything is fine. We can protect you against bad things, here's the proof, even though that's not true at all. And it's very ironic because, they're making it seem like they really can protect, everyone in society from anything bad. But then, a few pages later, the whole city is bombed. So instead of, dealing with that problem, they're just, they're spending all their time and energy in making it seem like everything's okay, when in reality, it's on the verge of complete destruction. So again, another very jarring juxtaposition between reality and what society is trying to push on everyone. Things are definitely not as peaceful as they would like it to seem. And I think that's kind of another theme of this book is the picture that you paint for other people, that everything is just fine, nothing is wrong, versus reality, the inner turmoil that everyone seems to be in, but everyone is repressing, even from themselves. So even though their intention is to make people less unhappy, they're actually making people more unhappy. And there's a lot of those, very ironic juxtapositions in this book. Another theme of this book would also be the uneasiness with technology. You know, there's a lot of good things that can come from technology, but ultimately the dangers that technology can pose on us as human beings. That's definitely a huge theme in this book as well. There's a great line in this book about, you know, if we would actually turn off our screens, what would we see? And it's kind of one of those call to actions almost, like, let's just stop, you know, let's just turn off our screens for once and actually talk to each other. Or at the very least, just turn off our screens and look at the reflection in the mirror. Because no one seems to even be in tune with themselves. Nonetheless, other people. Another great line from the book is as follows: "See the world. It's more fantastic than any dream made or paid for in factories. Ask no guarantees. Ask for no security. There never was such an animal." And again, it's kind of a call to action. Like, go see the world. Turn off your screens and actually be in the world. Be present. Instead of taking all these pictures of the world, actually just enjoy the experience. You know, actually enjoy people's company instead of just trying to paint this picture that your life is so perfect and you go on all these different trips and everything's wonderful like you do on social media. Me included, but it's a danger that we all need to be more aware of. You know, you can paint a pretty picture all you want, but that's not necessarily reflective of what's actually happening. And the book is just trying to get us to actually just live our lives instead of just being constantly paranoid about like the image that we present to the world and just being constantly entertained and not, you know, giving ourselves time to get to know ourselves or to really stop and think about important issues. Alright, so that concludes my first ever book chat. I hope you can see why I absolutely love this book. There's just so many really interesting themes and really interesting discussions to be had because of this book. And I hope that you guys enjoyed my ranting and rambling about this. I love this book so much, and the more I talk about it, the more I love this book. And I hope you feel the same way, and if you don't, I'd be curious to hear your opinion on it as well, of course. That's the whole point, right? Discussion. Let's not be like the society in this book. But as always, I want to thank you for watching this video, and until next time.